Welcome to episode 13 of the University of Missouri's Teaching for Learning Center's AI Critical Literacy podcast. This episode is the Doing It Wrong episode, not accusing anyone, just giving it a name. I'm the host, Jared Schroeder, an associate professor at the Missouri School of Journalism and also an AI Teaching and Innovation Fellow at the Teaching for Learning Center. I hope you enjoy this episode. When I was 25, I was promoted to a city editor role at the small newspaper, like mid-market, I think it was like 100,000 people in the city, daily newspaper where I worked as a reporter. I was promoted to an editor position where I was overseeing about a dozen reporters, and I was working so hard. We had a new editor, and he was a little bit like a football coach. He'd come out of his office and be like, Schroeder, and just motion for me to go into his office and stuff. And I was working really hard. He was kind of getting rid of some people, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't one of them. And so, but I didn't have a lot of training on how to be an editor. I'd been a copy editor for a couple of years. But anyway, so one day he comes out, it's like 6 o'clock in the evening. Newsroom's kind of empty out except for the people there overnight. And he goes, Schroeder, why are you still here? And I was like, well, I've got to line edit all these stories that the reporters turned in. That was part of my responsibility, was to give the first read and to send the stories back to the reporters. Hey, double check these facts. Hey, clarify this, fix your lead, whatever it was. Talk to this source you didn't talk to. That was I was the first line of editing. And he's like, well, why are you still out here? And I was explaining to him I had to do that work of editing, the first editing on all these stories, and it was taking a really long time. And he's like, well, that's because you're doing it wrong. He said, if you were to coach the reporters when you assign the stories, like really talk to them about what their goals are and what the story's about. And then when they come back to the newsroom from the reporting, if you talk to them, like ask them, how did it go? What were the main points? What's the lead item here? What's the news? If you did that work ahead of time, if you put in the work ahead of time, you would have less work to do at the end, because when they know what they're supposed to be doing, the reporters will do something more focused and more accurate, and you will spend less time editing. I still think about that lesson. I mean, it's been a while since I was a city editor at that newspaper. And I still think about that lesson because he was right. As soon as I started coaching the reporters ahead of time, and you're like, again, like, what is this? Why is he talking about this? And why isn't he talking about AI critical literacy? I am talking about AI critical literacy because this episode and a lot of the themes of this season, this is the final episode, episode 6 of season 2. A lot of the themes of this season has been about preparing, like instead of waiting until after there's been academic misconduct, and waiting until after a group of students has blown up an assignment because they've used AI and you didn't expect them to, but you also didn't tell them they couldn't. Like if we can coach them and teach them ahead of time about ethical decision making, about expectations, about what AI is and why it is or is not useful, and clear syllabus statements, clear assignment statements, if we could do this work ahead of time, we will have less academic misconduct problems. We'll have less assessment problems. That's sort of the focus of this episode. And that's why I've titled this episode the Doing It Wrong episode. I almost called it the You're Doing It Wrong episode, but that makes it seem accusatory, like I'm accusing everybody of doing it wrong, and that's not what I'm doing. The Doing It Wrong episode is a general doing it wrong, meant to refer to a way of thinking about how we can, like I just talked about, make our classes, our assessments, our teaching ahead of time before the problems may emerge. And I've talked to, I think, as usual, as is expected, I've talked to the perfect person for this. I talked to Tori Mondelli, actually the first time I've had a guest on the podcast twice. She was the guest on episode 1 of the entire podcast, episode 1, season 1. But Tori Mondelli is the founding director of the Teaching for Learning Center at the University of Missouri. She was one of the co-chairs for the AI Task Force in 2024. And she, in a lot of ways, has sort of been like a producer for this podcast. She's been in the background helping me think about the books that we've decided to use. By the way, this episode covers chapter 7 and the conclusion of The Opposite of Cheating book, the book that we've been looking at all semester. But anyway, Tori's been with me the whole way, helping me pick books, and she is in many ways the producer. So anyway, here's my conversation with her. I hope it is as useful to you and interesting to you as it was for me. Can you begin by introducing yourself? And I've asked every other guest the question of what their first encounter with AI was, but I've already asked you that question. And so I had a different one kind of asking you how AI is changing the way you think about teaching and the way you think about assessment.
Okay, thanks, Jared. It's great to be back. I'm Tori Mondelli, and I'm very lucky to have a wonderful job on campus. I direct our Teaching for Learning Center, and I'm also affiliated faculty with Adroit Studios Gaming Lab and the History Department in Arts and Sciences. How has my relationship to teaching and assessment changed with the advent of generative AI? My goodness. It has changed everything. Um, I mean, we most of us didn't expect to have, and I'm going to use Malik's word that we've embraced. We didn't expect to have a co-intelligence of this caliber. All of a sudden, here it is, and it really forces us, I think, as educators, to have to think about where we must preserve our curriculum from cognitive offloading and where we should innovate and empower our students to explore where to use it and where not to use it. That is immensely important intellectual work.
Yes, it is. I was just thank you for your response. It's like AI is both a catalyst and a pest, right? Like
Right.
it's a catalyst because it's forcing us to do things we probably should be doing anyway, looking at our curriculum, looking at our courses, looking at how we teach. It's asking us to do all the things we should be doing, but we often get in the habit of just like, well, there's another semester, let's trot the class out again. But at the same time, it's a
Mhm.
pest because like literally sitting on my desk, I mean, no one can see this but you, but I have Scantrons sitting on my desk. I have not seen physical Scantrons in 20 years, and they're sitting on
They're
my desk
back.
now. So that's the pest part, is I don't want to deal with these,
Right,
but here we
right.
are.
Yeah. Well, hearing you say that, reminds me of one of our time-honored approaches in the Teaching for Learning Center has been, quote, small teaching, unquote. One of my colleagues, mentors, Jim Lang, wrote the original book. Then we were lucky enough to bring Flower Darby on board. She wrote Small Teaching Online, right? And the philosophy there is just like what you said. You trot out the course that you've taught before and you modify it a little
Mhm.
bit. Small teaching, like what's feasible? What can we do with busy lives? Whether that's service obligations, research obligations, all the rest, and our teaching, right? And so it's like teach smarter, not harder, do this little tweak here, look at what the students are telling you in your mid-semester and end of semester student feedback. What are your peers telling you when they get to observe you? What are you reflecting on? And now it's like these little tweaks are just not appropriate for this moment. It's like we're really called to question everything.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, it's fine. Everything's fine. But like, I mean, in some ways, I guess I like the small teaching idea because, like, oh, it's almost like, and I'm not an experiment scientist kind of person, but like, if you have too many variables that you change, you don't know which variables worked and which ones didn't. So small teaching makes sense because you just change a few things each semester. You try them out, and if they're good, then you change something else. If you change too
I
many
love
things,
it.
you don't
Yeah.
know which things contribute to success and which things contribute to failure. But I think we could still do some of that here, with the AI and like experiment with one new AI related assignment or experiment with a new syllabus statement about AI and see if it covers it adequately for our students. Like, I
Yes.
guess we don't have to, you're right in that we have to think about everything, but we can also I guess we can make careful adjustments. You don't want to overcorrect,
I
right?
like that.
Like
Yeah.
I'm
And I
teaching my
think,
son how to drive.
we even named one of our AI offerings the small teaching with AI series because we were feeling overwhelmed. We were getting the sense that, faculty across campus were overwhelmed. And so, right, like we go back to that because that's the only realistic thing we can do. But putting it just in that bigger frame of everything has
Mhm.
changed and we are talking about significant pivots that it's a little different now.
Feels like a lot. And maybe it's just
It
because of
does.
the time of the semester we're in right now and everything feels like a lot, but it feels like a lot. So we're looking at the final chapter and then the conclusion of our book from this season of the podcast. And the authors in the chapter before the conclusion are talking about ethics. This is the ethics chapter. And I guess in a lot of ways, we've been talking about ethics all season on the podcast because it's in the background. We maybe haven't used the word ethics, but making your class like have legitimacy, assessments that are fair, but also the students are getting what's in the learning objectives is an ethical concern. The authors listed three misconduct, academic misconduct, quote, errors: a lack of knowledge and skills, an intent to violate standards, a deviation from standards for some other reason than the intent or lack of knowledge. First of all, they didn't list AI in that list specifically. Where does AI come into that list of three, do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it comes up just because of the volume and maybe the urgency. So it's almost like it's the background. AI is the background context for me when I read that list. I think that what the big thing that caught my eye is that in this section, they are saying, let's look at cheating not as a moral failure, but let's look at it as an error, right? And that's interesting. I think I kind of like that. I think that with AI, there may be more temptation. There's more opportunity to cheat and not have to engage other humans around it. It's potentially free to do it, so the temptation is ratcheted up. And then we'll get into it, right, as we talk about the whole chapter, but this idea of like, what if we approach cheating not as a moral failure, but instead somebody acting, I would call it unskillfully, not in their best interest.
Yeah. And we don't act in our best interest a lot of times, I guess. I have three
Yeah.
teenage sons and I watch it all the time. Yeah. And so, I was thinking about the same list and about the same question. A lack of knowledge and skills is one of them. And I thought, well, students might go to AI because they don't feel like they know how to do the assignment that they're asked to do. They're like, oh, I don't know I don't have the skills. I better use AI to help fill this gap. I'm in an emergency. I have to do it. They
Mm-hmm.
said they another reason is an intent to violate standards. That's kind of like a flagrantness to it. They just use AI because they don't care or think they're above the law or whatever it is. And the third one is just a general catch-all, I think, for everything else. But a lot of the chapter and a lot of the book has been about what we can do as teachers to disincentivize without creating criminals of our students, right? So I have mixed feelings about it, but what to do about it. But there was a earlier in the book basically said that you cannot fully eliminate academic misconduct from your classes, but you can certainly write it into your classes. And I thought about that we do have a role in reassessing. What were your thoughts on the tools that instructors have to protect the legitimacy of their assessments?
Yeah. So, and this is where they start talking about assessment, security theater, and all of that, right? So, I think there's a point that we should do all we can do at our proctoring sites. I'm pretty fascinated with the whole wearables revolution. I ran out and bought my AI glasses over a year ago because I wanted to see and understand what students and what members of society would have. Now there are wristbands for this. So I think that we are going to, as a campus, have to look at these things and talk about what is the right thing to do in terms of the way in which we set up our proctoring sites. Sometimes students starting, right, they're getting the glasses and they're getting their prescriptions baked into them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we don't have a policy to be proactive about this, how are you going to ask a student to remove their prescription glasses in a testing environment?
Yeah, you can do that.
It's really problematic. So I serve on the AI standing committee, and what a wonderful group of people and what a productive committee it is. It's really giving me hope that, and Jared, we were on the AI task force together, right? Like we had policy ideas. They were well received, I think, by campus and faculty senate, faculty council rather, but they didn't instantly become campus policy. It was like, okay, here are some ideas. And so now that the AI standing committee is looking at this stuff to say, all right, well, what do we really need as guidelines? as policies for for everything related to this, and specifically when it comes to those summative tests, when it comes to that. So more to be seen, but I'm hopeful that a very thoughtful group of people, and they're moving things along.
The wearables, like there's almost like we almost like I know like in the back of my mind I've like to continue functioning as an instructor I've had to like just like I'm trying not to stick my head in the sand about everything, but it's like the wearables are just one, that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. It's just one too many things. Like I mean I'm trying to do all the things to make my assessments legitimate and to play the gymnastics of the lawyering game to get around all the ways that AI can be used to ruin my assessments.
Oh,
In the
gosh.
wearables just I think that's checkmate. I don't know if I can win that battle. Like I just
Yeah, we had our first reported case of it last week, and I guess other students heard a student talking to Meta. It's the same brand as my glasses, and so, asked Meta a question, and yeah, distressing. On the lighter side, I can tell you, just as a person, it's kind of fun to walk around with the glasses and look at a tree or a flower and ask questions about our world and get kind of really, immediate, um, in-depth answers. So, it's that double edge. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good.
but it creates accessibility issues. Like you said, you can't take the glasses away. Like I don't want to be that guy anyway. But like it's like legally it's an accessibility issue to take away students' vision on a test. Like that just goes against everything, and then getting into their privacy about like why are you wearing these glasses?
Right. So, like, if we get a policy someday on this, I think it would have to be that students are not permitted, to wear AI glasses into that situation. And so you best not throw away your old prescription glasses. So there's going to have to be but they're going to have to know well in advance. It can't just be mentioned
Right.
on the day of, because that's not fair.
And that's the perfect actually transition to the kind of the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, which is the beforehandness of it, right? Like the
Oh, yeah.
authors keep telling us, and it's been a theme all book, that we can, if we use education beforehand, we can help limit students' misconduct or errors of judgment. So I wanted to ask you about the best ways that we can limit misconduct before assessments are even turned in. Like, what are the best techniques?
Right. So, like, something that, just as I'm reading the book, I think just in general, more conversations with students. And I know you've had guests on who talk about, the syllabus policy, and then, well, just having the syllabus isn't enough. You also have to mention these things in class, right? But I think also just baking in regular discussion on AI and how AI is used, and or where we choose not to use it, right? That all of that is important to structure that before the semester starts. Like, know your points, your touch points for that, and make it regular, make it frequent, and that does cut into time. But we do need to make time for this. There's no question about it. But I would say, the authors had that point that sometimes students don't know that they're cheating. And I think that that's fair in some percentage of cases. And I just wanted to, just nod to that and say, our notions of intellectual property are fluid and things are changing rapidly. So if that strikes, us as a little bit odd to say students don't know that they're cheating, I think we have to grapple with that a little bit more and try to put ourselves in the shoes of students, who have grown up with the internet, and in ways that those of us who are a bit older have not.
Yeah, and from class to class for them, from assignment to assignment, even they might have different expectations. So it's fair to say that maybe they like in the technology, it's not as a moving target too. So it's fair to understand. Like that's why I'm trying really hard to be. I'm trying to like agree with the authors, I guess, and be like, okay. I mean, whether they did it intentionally or not, I can't control their behavior. And I don't want to. I've got as I said, three teenagers. I can control their behavior either, but I'm
Right.
like that's a losing game to try to do that. You're just going to make everybody hate you. And so
Mm.
I'm just trying to create a class that's legitimate for every type of human. But like you said, like I think I did a good job of this semester, telling them at the beginning of the semester why AI is not right for some of the assignments and some of the learning objectives is a win. But you know where I just felt guilty when you were talking is I haven't re-upped some of that since day one. So I
Okay.
really hit it
Okay.
at the beginning of the semester. I was like, oh, okay. I adjusted my day one talk to include AI. But here we
Nice.
are mid-semester. I haven't talked to them about it since. I mean, I brought up things,
Yeah.
but I haven't reaffirmed for them, here's why I need you to know this and not use AI for this.
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this because it's sort of just in time. And you and I were talking about this just at the beginning of the podcast too. It's like it's that time of year where we all feel crunched for time, that time of the semester, right? And so we know that that's when the temptation deepens, when people are under the gun for time and whatnot. But I want to go back to your question for a second because you said, what approaches are really good on the front end, and one of the things I really loved that they shared was how successful some of these student-led honor code initiatives have been.
Mhm.
Specifically, that the research shows that the biggest buy-in to get students not to cheat is they're worried about, or they care about, that's a better way to phrase it, what their peers will think of them. And that that hit home for me. I said to myself, wow, it rather than making it about the professor. I mean, we need relationships, and so they do. You want that piece of between the student and the professor. But if who they really care most deeply about are their fellow students and their peers, then I can imagine that a class who gets together, at the beginning of a semester and co-creates an honor code for the class. And, whether you call it honor code, whatever you want to call it, but co-creating that and really talking about it and hearing why students, well, what's wrong with using AI when the professor says not to, or what's wrong with, whatever the case may be. That to me was one of the most compelling things in this book of, okay, let's leverage the peer-to-peer care around this issue.
That makes sense. Like they would have buy-in. Just
Yeah.
like we want the students to be invested. And I think it's more effective. And I think it's more effective generationally too with this group of students than it might have been with like maybe my generation or my parents' generation. Thinking about the idea that academic misconduct related to AI is not necessarily is an error as we try to think of it as a learning a teaching moment. How would you advise an instructor who's had a lot of problems with this, had a lot of students who are using AI on assignments, especially maybe writing assignments? Like, what are some of the better techniques here? Like, do we zero out their grade to teach them a lesson, or are there other ways to teach them?
Yeah. Okay. So we're in this case that you're presenting. Am I to assume that this professor does not want students to use AI at all?
That's a great question. Like we have to begin with,
Yeah.
did the professor make it clear from the beginning what the
Right.
expectations were?
Right. Right.
And I think that's a step where a lot of us, like that's step one, right? Is all of us have to start
Yeah.
documenting. I'm experimenting in my classes too with I added a new thing, an AI policy to an assignment recently. So
Cool.
let's say the instructor is trying to do what this book has said. They've talked to their students about the value of learning it, and now in their assignment sheet they've asked, like they've put, I do not want you to use AI in this assignment.
Okay. Okay. So now, and then the students turn it in, and the professor knows pretty well that 25% of the class has broken that expectation.
Mm-hmm.
So your question was, do we zero out the grade, or we give them a chance to revise and resubmit?
I mean, I've only been wondering about the conversation you can have with them. Like, I mean, I just had my students turning in an assignment, and I put on the bottom, that's what I was thinking of. Do not use AI for this. I told them they could use it in the research part, but and every word you turn in needs to be your words. And like, wrote it in the assignment, and I'm like looking at these, and I don't think my students actually. I think they did use their own writing, but I was like, I have no way of actually proving that they'd use.
Yeah. So that does get to the question of, yeah, how does the person know? And it's interesting, like, even my friends, my family, everybody's talking about AI these days. I can't get away from it. It's job number one at work, and it's everywhere. And people are really, I think, overconfident that they can detect it. And I think, the latest, greatest models are getting even better.
Yeah.
Claude's amazing. And then if you iterate with it a bit, I mean, this is like, this is some undetectable stuff, I'd say. Yeah, I don't like the case you've given me, Jared. But I will say that having read the book, what the authors are recommending is that you zero out the grade. Now, what they mean by that is that the student gets a zero for that assignment or that test. But I think what they're also assuming, the authors are assuming, is that the student can still pass the class, that this assignment is not so high stakes, or this test isn't so high stakes that it's automatically failing them out of the class, right?
Right.
So I would hate to see, a student fail an entire course as a first-time offender because they made an unskillful judgment, an error, and use AI when they were not supposed to. I do believe in teachable moments. I do love the idea that the authors have a model where they say, before you do anything, understand what went wrong. Why did the student do what they did, right? And so kind of understanding that. I mean, the alternative to zeroing out that assignment or assessment is letting them revise and resubmit, maybe not for full credit,
Mhm.
right? Like there's a strike against you. But the worry there that the authors bring up is that, well, then like, are you going to just have a revise and resubmit for the whole class? Because the honest student should also have that opportunity. Like, why not? So I think if you have the bandwidth for that kind of, more liberal revise and resubmit, bless your heart. That's pretty amazing. But if doing the zero out, I mean, your policy's clear. I think I would talk to the student before I just zeroed it out. I would want to understand. But in terms of what's feasible, especially for larger classes, it seems to me that's not draconian to give somebody a zero on an assignment that they've cheated on, right? That's not that's I think absolutely appropriate. But I wouldn't want to do that just in a vacuum without talking to the student and understanding what happened.
I mean, you have to be able to stand behind the grade. So that would mean you would have to be able to prove or have them say out loud that they did cheat on it. Otherwise, if it's indistinguishable and the policy, I don't know, it'd be really hard
Yeah.
to do that. I mean, part of me is like, well, there's there's this semester's assignment, but then there's the next time you teach the class, you have to change the assessment to make sure that it can't be cheated on again, I assume, right? Like you fooled me once, let's not do it again, right?
What popped into my mind is this idea that we do have to redesign so that we are understanding and seeing students in the learning process as it's unfolding, rather than just looking at a product at the end, because all products can be fabricated. They all can be. So
What I was
there
going
we
to say
go.
was we have to ask ourselves, was like, even if the student did use some AI on it that you asked them not to, I mean, was the learning objective still at least somewhat met? Was the original goal, if they used AI, but was at least some of the original goal still met? Did they learn something? Because it could be that you just say, look, you got me. A small percentage of students, I think, misused it, but they still probably learned. I can't prove it
Mhm.
because it's so difficult to prove. I've just got to make a change make a note in next semester. Do not give this, like, I open up my assignment sheets and I'll put a note at the top like this was a problem. You need to change the rubric or whatever, because I'll forget. Like I'll get into
Yes.
whatever January or August, and I'll be making the class again, and I'll be like, oh, everything's wonderful. It's going to be great, and I'll forget that it wasn't
Correct.
wonderful on that assignment. I did it wrong.
Yeah, yeah. I think that redesigning, having kind of more scaffolded, smaller assignments due where there's more process. I'm not teaching right now, but man, if I was, I think I'd go back to really short oral exams, because that's the way when you're talking to a student, that's the way you know uh, if they've integrated something, if they've learned something.
Yeah, and I don't think I have any training. That's been a common theme throughout this book and through the folks I've talked to this season. I have no experience doing oral exams. I mean,
It's
other than
not
like
hard.
and like
Yeah.
how do I consistently and fairly grade
Hmm.
conversations with students? Some are going to be like does it disadvantage certain students who are less socially capable? Where some students are just really charismatic and they can make knowing
Hmm.
nothing sound like everything. And then there's some students who will know absolutely everything, but just don't have the
Yeah.
social skills to express it to
Yeah,
me.
yeah. I think that the fact that you're mindful of that is going to make you a more fair conversation partner. And I think, that says something, but you have a point. But using the Socratic method, I think, is really a handy technique for us, just in the
Mhm.
classroom, but also in those oral exams, where really students will just be giving you an answer and you're just trying to get them to elaborate. You're just trying to, see the depth of that knowledge.
It sounds like what we do with the doctoral students, really. Like and I mean, you would
Mhm.
know this too. Like they
Yeah.
do comprehensive exams, but then they have to defend their answers. And a lot
Right.
of time, I did one last week where the answers that were written were not really what I like. They weren't what I hoped. They weren't quite. But I told his chair, I was just like, if he can answer these questions during the defense, I'll be confident. Like if he can come around
Mhm.
and explain them to me through the oral defense, then I'll be like, okay, he did get it. He just didn't explain it well enough.
Okay. Oh, I hope it worked out well for that student.
Not yet. Not yet.
Talk about teaching ethical reasoning. Wow. Okay.
Please go. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so they kind of surprised me in this chapter. Chapter, still I think it's chapter 7, right?
Chapter 7.
Where they actually are kind of calling on institutions, and maybe even individual professors to spend time with students teaching ethical reasoning. And they're not just talking about a philosophy class,
That would be
and that really surprised me. But I think they make a good case. If you boil it down, it seems like it's is another flavor of critical thinking,
mhm.
but about their own decision making. So I just wanted to,
No, that's a good point. And like, give them the
touch on that.
tools, give the students the tools. It's possible that you've given them in your assignment sheets, in your rubrics, in your syllabus, every possible reason to be ethical, but they don't know how to fall. They don't have the tools, like the literacy of it, to be like, oh, okay, this makes sense because I can connect it to something I know. So
Mhm.
it is possible, I guess. I think I was just really skeptical in this chapter that I can somehow change my students' ethics. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
maybe I should believe that I can. I don't know. I guess it
Mhm.
gets back to individuals' belief that they could change people. I can teach people and I could maybe really make a difference in their lives when I teach them. But can I change their ethics? I think that's a challenge. But it doesn't mean they can't be done just because I think I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical of a
Yeah.
lot of things that could be done.
Yeah, and if we think about the developmental age of the traditional college student at Mizzou, these are young people who are still developing. And I love the idea that it's not just us as instructors, but once again, this idea of leveraging the class, the peer group to talk about it. And one of the points they made in the book was like, oftentimes the students who make an error in judgment because they're stressed out or, time management was not a strength, that they're just thinking about the short term check it off my list, I got it in, and they're not really focusing on the long-term consequences. So I like the idea that we can have those conversations and remind students and talk about it, don't jeopardize the bigger picture, even though you want that short kind of, thing to be over. So that's interesting to me, that, people can always change. It's not easy to change, but I think we need to give them room and space to develop and to have those conversations together.
But almost everything we've talked about this today has been pre-work, ahead of time work, right? Like you've got to teach them ethical reasoning. You've got to put in your assignment sheets, requirements about AI to be clear. You have to change your assessments ahead of time. It's too late after they've turned in the assessment. Everything is pre-coaching, pre-teaching, pre-planning. So a lot of it is being proactive, I guess, because once the assignment's turned in or once the cheating has happened, your range of options has narrowed, and it becomes much more difficult to turn something into a teaching moment, I guess. It could still be done, but the range narrows. So
Yeah, that seems fair. That I think is right.
it's just kind of a theme that I didn't think about when I read the chapter until we started talking about it. So conclusions, the conclusions chapter, where I just feel like I just started reading this book. They talked about the assessment security theater, which was, I felt so seen. And I was like, am I doing assessment security theater when I try to, give my tests in person now because of AI? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, what are your intentions? I think your intentions are really good ones. It's not about appearing a certain way. It's about safeguarding fairness.
It's like I need to know what you know, is what I keep telling the students. I need to know what you know. Like I don't need to know what AI knows. And I mean, you have to be able to prompt well if you want to get good answers out of AI. And if you don't know the basics of, what I'm teaching or whatever someone else is teaching, they can't do it. So I'm like, look, you need this. If you want to use AI, you still need to know something.
Yeah.
Like the more you know, the better tool it is. I feel like, to at least if you want to do more advanced things.
Right.
So what are, we have to make, I think that's been a theme this semester, this episode, that we have to make decisions, basically faculty, instructors in the classroom. AI is forcing us to make some decisions. So, I've been talking to guests all season for insights about protecting our assessments, but I haven't gotten to talk to you about that. So what is your advice for how instructors on this campus can protect their assessments?
Yeah, I would say I think we need to end the period of time where it's an instructor in his or her own class making a judgment call. I think it's time to move into collective conversations where faculty who are teaching in a degree program talk about where should we have AI and where must we keep it out. Because I am an AI forward educator. I believe that an arms race against students in AI is just wrongheaded. I think we have to be very judicious about where we teach them AI skills, literacy, competency, and we have to embrace it. Speaking for myself, right? Like I want to embrace it and help students use it as a tool. I don't want to shut it off and shut it away. I think that as they're moving towards graduate school, as they're moving into industry and jobs, military, wherever they're headed, this is the new way that things are getting done. So I guess that's why this whole book, I've really enjoyed the book, but it is more about stopping the use of AI, and that's not where I'm at. I'm about how do we embrace it so that it enhances learning and deepens learning, and so it's kind of all of these questions about stopping it. It's okay, that's fair, but I'm more excited about what the future holds with it, for good use. Yeah, so it is necessary, like you're saying, because there will be places in the curriculum where it needs to, not to be there. But until we sit down with one another in our academic programs and really talk about where and how, I think that we're just in survival mode. We're not really in, forward thinking, getting our students ready for the future mode. So I'm hoping, some conversations, Jared, you've been a part of some of them, we've been, talking about that, how do we conduct academic program review and redesign with people in the collective rather than just kind of every person, every professor for himself or herself. It was necessary for the past couple of years, but now I think we've got to move out of that stance.
And I guess it would help the students and it would help with academic integrity if we had a little bit more consistency from class to class about what the students are expected to do. But I mean, we have to balance it with, academic freedom. So we have to think about I guess it has to become part of our learning objectives, is what you're saying, right? Like not on a class level, but on a degree program level or a school level or even the college,
Yeah.
universities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And maybe it. I would never dictate, where, if and where it would be. But I think that the faculty who are teaching in those degree programs have to have those tough conversations and, figure that out together, and vote on it, or whatever the departmental mechanisms are. And consistency and standardization is really not what I'm shooting for here. That's nearly not the vision. I think it has to be uniquely relevant and helpful in the discipline and where that industry or sector is going or is presently in and where it's going.
So there's almost like you can think of it two different ways. There's knowledge of AI, like how it works, how to use it, what its role is in your field or profession. That's something that we need to think about on like the program level, I think that you're talking about. But then there's also knowledge of the tool and how it affects your classroom environment. And there's probably a connection between its connection in the field and its role in your environment. But one is about teaching students about the thing, the AI, and one is about making sure that your class is legitimate, like assessment wise, that your learning objectives are actually student learning objectives and not tool based learning objectives. Is that what's wrong? I'm gonna ask you, what did I just do wrong? Like, what am I missing here? I'm just making this up as we're going. So
no, that sounds pretty good to my ears. I would maybe say it slightly different. Maybe that your program learning objectives, I think, should mirror what is needed in your field, in the workforce. So, like, we don't want to graduate our students and then those entry level jobs, employers are disappointed that a Mizzou graduate never got to use AI to, in their major field, that it was always, restricted or something. But I like your distinction that there are kind of, learning about the tool. I think that can happen. It doesn't even have to happen in the major. We will be having a new AI certificate that any student major can take, so you can learn the basics of AI. But then, as you're moving into your major field of study, you're getting your degree in journalism or health sciences or whatever you're getting it in. That's where, that's what I'm saying. Like, those program learning objectives should either explain, explicitly why AI is not there, or, delineate, what are the AI competencies and skills that our students know how to do in the field. And kudos to the College of Business. They have already done this. I think they were leaning that way anyway, but then I was told that their accreditor issued a new standard and requirement that they had to do this with AI, which makes a lot of sense in business considering how quickly that's all moving.
So, you know, I think you're a little more AI forward than me, which is good. Fine. Right. I think we need everybody. Um, I think there's a lot of faculty on campus who are really wrestling with this, right? Like, and I think in some ways AI feels like a burden. And because they're having to do a lot of work
Yes.
that they didn't
Yes.
have to do before, like the 215 copies of the test I have to make next week and
Yes.
carry around. And then, what would you tell the more skeptical, the more AI not as interested? Like, what is the what would you tell them about how they should be thinking about AI?
I would say that they're on their own journey and that if they haven't spent much time with the tools themselves, they really ought to do that.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Because I think because now I've integrated it so much into my own work and I see how helpful it is with productivity on my end, that it's more of a help to me than it is an enemy. You know? So if you can see how it can help you in your own discipline, with your work, with your teaching, it'll give you some insights into how it can maybe help a more junior learner, a novice. And you may be very clear that no, in the end, we're not using this, and certainly not in my whichever course. But there may be other places where you say, you know what, maybe that class, maybe I could um, give students the option of using AI or not. I also don't like the idea of forcing our students to use AI. I think there are a lot of very strong ethical reasons why they wouldn't want to use it. And I am proud of MU that we are paying attention to how we help students choose models that have the least environmental impact. So in the Show Me AI walled garden, more and more of us are getting access to it, but there are a lot of mini models that can be used that have very light um, carbon footprint. And then, you don't need the super duper heavy ones for all the things you're doing. So being wise about when to use it, how to use it, which model to use so that we're not wrecking our environment frivolously. That's important too.
And so I think that makes a good point about it's difficult if you don't want students using AI in your assessments, you probably need to know enough about AI to know how they might use AI in your assessment. So that makes sense that like even if you're very AI skeptical, you probably need enough literacy of the thing. You need to use it a few times, you need to try it out and see what it can do so that you know for yourself how it's going to affect your class or how to write the syllabus statement or the assignment requirement in a way that actually covers it because you understand the tool enough to know what it does and what it doesn't do and how students could use it.
Yeah, but and in the Teaching for Learning Center, we're doing a lot of programming, and we have been for a couple of years now, but we don't push our own AI forwardness on people. We absolutely respect where everybody is, and everybody has good reasons to be where they are. I think my earlier point is just about collective conversations that faculty and degree programs should be having with each other to talk about this, because it's, aside from the College of Business, to my knowledge, it's not really happening yet anywhere else. And I think that is what we have to do going forward.
I did want to ask you what tools are available to instructors, who want to know more, who want to be better
Yeah.
educated, who want to address it. So you're probably the best person on campus to ask about this. What are some of the tools that people who are AI skeptical or even AI enthusiastic, like what are some of the tools available to them?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that. What are the tools, but also I think what are the programs? What are the professional development opportunities?
Hmm.
So the tools that we all have. The good news is that Copilot, which is a Microsoft product, Copilot Chat is now something that we all have. And as long as you make sure that the green little shield that you've logged in using your MU credentials and the green shield is up, then it is FERPA compliant, what our IT colleagues like to call data class level 3. So that means that if you have ideas and if you treat your course materials as your own intellectual property and you don't want it feeding a large language model, that's secure, that is basically, just staying here at the university under your account. Really happy to say that we had an excellent, very well attended promptathon with the Copilot Microsoft trainers. They're coming back. They'll be with us at Teaching Renewal Week, which is our January virtual conference. So hopefully folks will come out for that. And I think there'll be more opportunities for that Copilot chat. So you don't need any special permission. Everybody has that. And then there's the Show Me AI walled garden, which we are just in a proof of concept pilot right now, but there are going to be successive waves even coming up towards the end of the semester of more faculty members and students and a couple of staff members getting in. So if you haven't yet applied for that, that's a wonderful tool. That's going to give you access to those mini models I was talking about, plus the heavy duty models. And again, that's a walled garden. So that means FERPA compliant. There is still work that has to be done for people who work in the medical school and other schools where HIPAA is an important consideration. So those guardrails are getting put in place, and hopefully we'll have good news on that soon. So in addition to that, I think like Zoom AI companion for transcribing things, I think that's safe. But I would recommend that people go to the Do It strategy webpage and scroll down. On that webpage are all of the tools that are approved at MU, and it'll tell you exactly up to what data class level. So if it is FERPA compliant or if it isn't. What I try to advise against is, don't just go out there and try any AI app that's out there. We're not allowed to do that. You have to get things, you have to submit and get things approved through Do It, because there are just, we have to have certain memorandum of understanding in place regarding our data, any student information you might be putting in there. It's really important that we safeguard that data. So those are the tools. So the offerings, I mentioned Teaching Renewal Week in January. That's a big conference. There will be wonderful sessions there for beginners and intermediate people who want to understand how you can use Gen AI for teaching and learning and assessment. But even for the rest of the semester, we do have things going on. We have that AI small Teaching with AI series going on, which is often will be demos. A lot of the AI fellows have been generous with their time, and they come in and show, what's one or two things that you can do, and your opportunity to ask questions and try it out yourself. And then we have continued the very popular AI learning labs that are longer sessions where a facilitator, usually one of our staff or AI fellows, will come in and either focus in on a specific tool or a specific function. And then you have a whole dedicated hour to working with that in a supportive environment with lots of colleagues from across the university. I also want to plug all the good work that Mizzou Online is doing. They have a wonderful knowledge base on their website, but from time to time, they're offering different boot camps and other AI offerings as well. So always a lot going on.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, and then there's a lot of opportunities to think. Like, I think I've talked about this earlier this season, but it's just the AI is kind of, and even this episode, like AI is catalyzing us to do something we probably should be doing already, which is updating our classes and keeping an eye on, how we approach work and how we assess student work. So it's kind of forcing
Yeah.
us to reassess all of that.
Yeah. And Jared, that's reminding me this summer we had a brand new program. It was called Course Redesign Institute. And we invited people to apply. It was a 3-week institute for this more sustained, higher touch professional development experience. And most of the folks there were grappling with AI and what to redesign, how to redesign it. And it was just a fabulous time. So we're going to do it again this summer. And so I'd say for those who know that they have to do this work and want to do it with colleagues and best practices or emerging practices in mind, please do consider squeezing us into your summer. That will most likely be in July. We'll have some dates and application materials open soon.
We've covered a lot, right? Like we've covered,
Great.
hopefully we've given people a lot to think about and maybe even some specific resources, but definitely a lot to think about. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jared. Thanks for bringing this book to our campus and doing the podcast. It's been really lovely. I've enjoyed listening to all your guests.